The Reformed Church of East Africa is celebrating 120 years under the theme Being Doers of the Word, a time to look back at the past and reflect on what is coming. The Reformed Church of East Africa first landed in Kenya in 1901 through missionaries and Dutch farmers from South Africa. Historically, the church goes back to the time of Protestant Reformation and the teachings of one John Calvin, who taught the Reformed faith. From Geneva, Switzerland, the church, the doctrine, and the faith traveled down south and found itself with Dutch farmers in South Africa, and later to Kenya through Tanzania and the port of Mombasa. At around 1901 is when the Dutch settlers landed in Kenya around Plateau area and Nakuru. First known congregation, which was Christian Vergenuk, which is around Nakuru, was constituted in 1903, and this marked the genesis.
And around 1930s, they started to grow a small body of believers of Africans, indigenous people around the Plateau area, who would take and drive the oxen. You know, those days cars were rare. They were driving oxen to the worship places, and they would sit outside and wait for the whites to worship and come back. But after some time, they asked, why don't you introduce this worship or God that you are worshiping to us? And that's how the genesis of the church began.
The white settlers who dominated the church at this phase of history, through interaction with the local communities and laborers, started developing a hybrid kind of congregation. By early 1940s, a sizable indigenous congregation had formed, and the Dutch church in South Africa decided to send a missionary to come and specifically work with indigenous populations. In 1942, one B.B. Abus and his wife came and settled at Plateau, present-day Plateau Mission Station.
And using the experience of translation, having worked in Malawi, they had learned Chewa. Chewa is a Bantu language that has similarities with Kiswahili. And so they also sought the help of some Swahili speakers, and therefore they went to Tanzania, and they brought three people who are teachers, and they established schools, and they started translating the Bible teachings, particularly the book of Matthew and John, and then they translated the hymns, the Psalms, and then they translated the Catechism. And you know, the Catechism is one of the basic doctrinal books that teaches the Reformed faith.
Years that followed saw hard work from the team, nurturing indigenous populations, and 10 years later in 1952, they established what we can call the first missionary Bible school, present-day Bethel Church at Plateau Mission Station. This is where they started to train ministers to be, and 2 years later, in 1956, they ordained the first batch of indigenous people.
Two of them were Tanzanians and one was Kenyan. The Kenyan one is Reverend Jason Wamukota, but also we had Lugumira from Tanzania and Huba Tibanga. And Tibanga was posted to remain with the congregation in Plateau. Lugumira was sent to Mungu Nasi, which is in Eldoret West, and then Jason Wamukota went to establish the Kitale Presbytery.
A mixture of things took place around this time, good and bad. Independence was ringing and moments were tense. Bwana Lobsa and Mamseb took over from B.B. Abus. There were only 3 ordained indigenous ministers, yet the white man had to go. Bwana Lobsa then handed over the mission to the Reformed Mission League, the RML, which took over the young church.
So Rcea took over. A new name was coined around July 1963, where the first foremost synod sat, and the name was adopted, Reformed Church of East Africa.
Today we talk about 17 presbyteries, and we are talking about 625 congregations, meaning the church has grown. When we talk about the pastors, again, from 3 pastors to 12 ordained pastors, and today you are talking of over 200 pastors in the entire country.
From the onset, and if you can keenly look at it from a distance, the church stood at 3 key pillars.
They came in and started schools, and beside the schools, they came in and also started hospitals. That is how we came up with areas like Plateau Hospital. That's how we have come up with schools like Wareng.
One was the spiritual, that is embodying the church, building the spiritual aspects of the members. And 2, they had also education. And then the 3rd pillar was what we can call a social pillar. And this was majorly represented by medical work. But later on, with the involvement of RML, it took other aspects like relief, development, agriculture, and other aspects that developed the whole being.
In the Lord's own workings, the church has graciously grown and expanded its tendons as far as the expansive terrains of this country. Asal to plateau, east to west, north to south, and congregants to ministers. In healthcare mission work, for instance, the Plateau Mission Hospital has made great milestones in changing lives and ministering to the people from all walks of life.
If I use the statistics of 2022, we saw over 24,000 patients who come here.
Not forgetting the milestones they have made in terms of broadening the scope of service at the facility through infrastructure investment, sustainability, partnerships, quality of care, and being the throbbing heart of our community.
Hospitali ya Plateau imetusaidia sana kama wamama. Hasa wakati tunapoenda kusherehekea miaka 120, tungependa kurudisha shukrani sana kwa kanisa.
Rcea imekuwa msaada kwa sisi. Wanatusaidia sana. Hata manurses, madaktari. Tuko sawa, tunakaa ni kama tuko nyumbani.
Boitu tugul amu sipitali nyo. Nikibwane betut age tugul kinyoeje, ketoreteje, hasa kiboiboen makitindoi nga.
Furthermore, in addition to the Plateau Mission Hospital, the church, as it marks 120 years, has developed several other mission hospitals in the region.
Lokichar, West Pokot, we have Marich, we have Maridad in Trans Nzoia, we have Ndalat in Nandi, Lesos in Nandi, in Napkoi in Uasin Gishu County, Kipsaos in Elgeyo Marakwet, Kapkitony, Kocholwa in the heart of Floswa in Kamarer, and many clinics.
In education, the Reformed Institute for Theological Training stands monumental, historical, and with pride as the training wing of the church.
Educational facilities are as old as the history of the church, because the schools contributed very much to the population of the current church.
We are an institution of the Reformed Church of East Africa, and we are the training wing of the church.
And they have been able to partner with the government on TVET programs, enriching their portfolio of courses offered and the quality of minds they produce.
Personally, I thank God so much because it made me shape not only to become a pastor, but also to become a model in the society.
Ninashukuru tena kanisa letu la Reformed kwa sababu ya kutuwekelea mikono sisi kama wamama tabute namna ya kufanya kazi na kuungana na wachungaji wazee waume ili tuendeleshe hii kazi injili ya Kristo katika dunia nzima.
Away from the Reformed Institute for Theological Training, the church sponsors a series of other primary schools and high schools. Evangelism and mission work is dynamic, and the current church, in building up to what was started by the earlier missionaries, building schools, churches, hospitals, and training people, church leaders have explored other avenues to serving our communities.
Now, we also have relief work. We do a lot of relief work, particularly in the more vulnerable areas, Turkana, West Pokot, Baringo, Elgeyo Marakwet, and any other place where there's need.
The church has also invested heavily in peace building, more so in Turkana and West Pokot counties, where for a long time volatility has been experienced. Taking stock of 120 years is a magnificent initiative, a part of history, a part of things to be done there, a blessing to share and thanksgiving to give back to the Lord for the far He has brought us. Looking forward into the future, beyond 120 years of Rcea under the theme Being Doers of the Word, we are thankful, joyous, and we commit to set out and be doers of the Word.
When we look forward, 95% of Reformed churches are in the rural area. We have not gone so far in the urban areas, where we are having our young people, we are training them. When they go to the universities, the only places that they can get job is going to the urban areas. Now when they have to go to the urban areas, where are they going to fellowship?
Wanaweza kutusaidia ku-expand ama tufanye diversification, isikuwe not only tu computer lab na hizo TVET courses.
And when we imagine about 120 years, how about tomorrow after these 120 years? That we use the resources available to reach out again to the unreached counties.
So our theme is being doers of the word. And in 120 years, we can take an example of Moses and break into 40-40-40. That at 120 years, Moses had come of age. And this church now has come of age.
If we look back at the history of the Reformed Church, we have contributed significantly to the well-being of this nation. If you look at 50 plus high schools, each of them, even with the least number of students, 500, you can see the number of students that we have produced. And for your information, the current president, His Excellency William Samoei Ruto, was our student at Wareng High School. And so we are proud that we have treated people in Plateau, we have educated people at Wareng and other schools, we have fed and intervened in situations of conflict, we have also fed the hungry, and we have preached to the hungry souls. So we are very happy and humbly pray that God gives us this opportunity to continue doing even more. And we want to welcome everyone to partner with us. When our forefathers went to fight for independence, they had 3 identified enemies. They wanted to deal with poverty, and they wanted to deal with the illiteracy, and they wanted to deal with ill health. And in those areas, that's where we are strong. They forgot the 4th one, which was the spiritual part. And now we are also dealing with that.
Ahead of us, a lot still remains to be done, and as we stop to reflect upon ourselves, our deepest conviction must be to solidify our resolve, sharpen our facets, serve each other, and coexist in love and harmony. One of our upcoming proposals going forward, dear brethren, is to construct this magnificent structure for the Lord. And the Lord said that when the time is ripe, I, the Lord, shall do it. Shalom.